The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Zex-4 of the Zentari Empire finished reading the human surrender terms. The massive dome-shaped room, capable of housing representatives from 300 different species, had never witnessed such audacity. Even the floating gas beings of Nephros stopped their eternal swirling to listen. "You want us to repeat that?" Admiral Korth 9 asked, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of extreme confusion among his people. His translator collar struggled to process the human language properly, making clicking sounds as it worked. The human ambassador, a small female with graying hair named Sarah Chen, stood calmly at the speaking platform. She wore a simple blue uniform with no visible weapons, yet something about her presence made even the war-hardened Korth uncomfortable. "The terms are simple," Chen repeated, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Earth formally surrenders to the Galactic Alliance. We acknowledge our planet as conquered territory. In exchange, we request permission to contribute our military specialists to your ongoing conflicts." Laughter erupted from several species. The Vorthak delegation, massive bear-like creatures covered in natural armor, slammed their claws against their seats in amusement. The delicate butterfly-winged Sylvans fluttered their wings rapidly, their version of hysterical laughter. Ambassador Zex-4 raised one of his 6 arms for silence. The Zentari were the dominant military force in the galaxy, having conquered 47 star systems in the past century. Their gray skin was marked with ritual scars from countless battles, and their reputation for brutality was legendary. Ambassador Chen, Zex-4's voice carried a tone of barely contained amusement. "Your species has been observed for exactly 73 standard days. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are chemical-based projectiles. Your fastest ships cannot exceed light speed. What exactly do you think you can contribute to civilizations that have mastered energy weapons and faster-than-light travel?" Chen smiled, and somehow that expression sent a chill through the chamber that the environmental controls couldn't explain. "We understand our technological limitations. However, humans have one specialty that we believe would be valuable to your various military campaigns." "And what would that be?" Admiral Korth leaned forward, his massive bulk straining the reinforced chair designed for his species. "We're very good at killing things." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the quiet of anticipation, but something deeper, something primal that spoke to the predator instincts that evolution had built into every sentient species, no matter how civilized they had become. Representative Thys of the aquatic domains was the first to speak. Her voice bubbled through the water-filled communication sphere that housed her during council sessions. "Ambassador, every species here has military capabilities. The Zentari alone have conquered dozens of worlds. What makes you think humans have anything unique to offer?" Chen activated a small device, and a holographic display appeared above the speaking platform. Images began cycling through scenes that made several delegates look away. Humans in various historical periods, engaged in warfare that seemed shockingly brutal even by galactic standards. "These are historical records from our planet," Chen explained calmly. "For the past 10,000 years, humans have been in a continuous state of warfare. Not against alien invaders or competing species, but against ourselves. We have perfected the art of killing other humans, beings who think exactly like us, who share our biology, our psychology, our capabilities." The images showed medieval knights in armor, their weapons dripping with blood, soldiers in trenches, faces covered in mud and exhaustion, modern military units moving through urban environments with calculated precision. Our species has spent millennia learning to predict, outmaneuver, and eliminate opponents who know all our tactics because they invented the same ones. We have studied every possible way to end life, not just quickly but efficiently, psychologically, strategically. Admiral Korth's translator made several rapid clicking sounds before managing to process his words. "You're saying you want to join our military because you're good at killing your own kind?" "I'm saying we want to join your military because we've spent 10,000 years learning to kill the most dangerous predators in our galaxy." Chen's smile never wavered. "Other humans." The holographic display shifted to show more recent footage, humans in military gear moving through complex environments with a fluidity that impressed even the Zentari. Their movements weren't just efficient. They were predatory in a way that seemed almost supernatural. "Your species fights for territory, resources, survival," Chen continued. "Honorable motivations. Our species fights because we enjoy it. We have individuals who volunteer to enter combat zones not for pay, not for glory, but because they find the experience of mortal combat psychologically satisfying. Representative Theis's water sphere bubbled more rapidly. You're describing psychopaths. Among other things, yes. We have sociopaths who can make tactical decisions without emotional interference. We have individuals with post-traumatic stress who have learned to function efficiently in chaos that would paralyze normal minds. We have people who have stared death in the face so many times that they've become comfortable with it. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. The Sylvan's wings fluttered in agitation. The Vorthak delegation had stopped laughing entirely. And you want to send these individuals to serve in our armies? Zex4's voice carried a note of genuine concern. We want to send them to serve in your armies, Chen confirmed. Under your command structure, following your rules of engagement, serving your strategic objectives. But with the understanding that you're getting soldiers who don't freeze in combat. Don't hesitate to pull triggers and don't suffer from the psychological limitations that affect normal, mentally healthy individuals. Admiral Korth stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. You're offering us an army of the mentally disturbed. We're offering you an army of the combat effective. The question is whether you want soldiers who think warfare is a necessary evil, or soldiers who think warfare is the most natural thing in the universe. Chen gestured to the holographic display one final time. The image showed a human soldier, face painted with mud and something darker, eyes focused with an intensity that seemed to burn through the projection itself. Every species here has warriors, but humans are the only species that has warriors who fight other warriors for entertainment, who study combat as an art form, who improve killing techniques as a hobby. Her voice remained perfectly calm, perfectly reasonable. The choice is yours. The voting would begin tomorrow. But already several delegates were reconsidering their assumptions about the small, primitive species from the third planet of an unremarkable star system. The vote had been closer than anyone expected. 47 species voted against accepting human military assistance. 43 voted in favor and 10 abstained. By the narrow margin of galactic democracy, humanity was granted provisional status as military contractors to the Galactic Alliance. Admiral Korth stood in the observation deck of the Zentari flagship Void Render, watching the first human transport ship dock with their station. The vessel was embarrassingly primitive by galactic standards, little more than a modified cargo hauler with basic life support and minimal shielding. What concerned him wasn't the ship's technology but its contents. How many are they sending? His aide, Commander Vex 7, asked while reviewing the manifest on a holographic display. 50 humans for the initial deployment, Korth replied. Ambassador Chen called them a test unit to demonstrate effectiveness. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, they could see figures moving through the docking tube. Even in the standard-issue environmental suits provided by the Alliance, there was something unsettling about the way the humans moved. Their steps were too measured, too deliberate, like predators conserving energy for an expected hunt. The first human to emerge into the station's receiving bay removed her helmet to reveal a scarred face and eyes that seemed to catalog every exit, every potential weapon, every tactical advantage in the room within seconds. Her name tag read, Martinez in standard galactic script. Welcome aboard the Void Render, Commander Vex 7 approached with the traditional Zentari greeting gesture, extending his arm with palm open to show he carried no weapons. Martinez looked at his hand for a moment, then back to his face. Are you the commanding officer? No, I am Commander Vex 7, aide to Admiral Korth. The Admiral will brief you on your assignment once your unit is assembled. Assignment? Martinez tilted her head slightly. I thought we were here to kill things. The casual way she said it made Vex 7's translator pause for several seconds, struggling to find appropriate context. In Zentari culture, violence was discussed with ritual formality, acknowledging the gravity of taking life. This human spoke about killing the way one might discuss the weather. The remaining 49 humans filed into the receiving bay with similar efficiency. No unnecessary conversation, no obvious excitement or anxiety about being in an alien environment for the first time. They simply assembled in formation, checked their equipment, and waited for orders with the patience of professional killers. Admiral Korth arrived to find them standing in perfect rows, each human's attention focused on him with an intensity that was genuinely unnerving. Their ages varied widely from barely adult to well into what humans considered middle age. Some carried visible scars. Others showed no obvious signs of their backgrounds, but they all shared the same predatory alertness. I am Admiral Korth, commanding officer of this vessel and the Zentari, 3rd Battle Fleet. You have been assigned to assist in our current military operation against the Hive Collective in the Proxima sector. A human near the front raised his hand. The gesture was so unexpectedly civilian that it caught Korth off guard. Yes? Sir, I'm Sergeant Williams. What are the rules of engagement? Korth activated a holographic display showing the star system they would be attacking. The Hive Collective has established defensive positions on 3 planets. Standard protocol is to neutralize military installations while minimizing civilian casualties. The Hive species is insectoid, operates through pheromone-based communication, and has proven resistant to most psychological warfare tactics. Williams nodded. Do they feel pain? The question was asked with such matter-of-fact curiosity that Commander Vex 7 physically stepped backward. Excuse me? Do they experience physical pain the way other species do? It affects tactical choices about how to engage them. Korth found himself answering before he could consider whether he should. Yes, they do experience pain, though their response to it is different from mammalian species. Good to know. Williams made a note on a small electronic device. What about their family structures? Do they care about individual survival or just collective survival? They appear to value individual lives, yes. Another human, this one with graying hair and arms covered in faded tattoos, spoke up. Are we expected to take prisoners? When practical, intelligence gathering is valuable. What constitutes practical? Korth realized he was being asked to define the boundaries of what these humans were permitted to do, and the implications of that question were beginning to worry him. Standard military protocols apply. No torture, no execution of surrendering enemies, no targeting of non-combatants. The tattooed human nodded thoughtfully. What about psychological warfare? Are there cultural taboos we should avoid? Or are we cleared to use whatever works? What did you have in mind? Just general principles. Some species have specific fears or psychological triggers that can be exploited. Makes the job more efficient. Commander Vex 7 leaned close to Korth's ear. Admiral, perhaps we should discuss the specific parameters of engagement before deploying them. But Korth was watching the humans' faces as they listened to the conversation. There was no excitement, no bloodlust, no apparent emotion at all. They were discussing the systematic destruction of enemy forces the way engineers might discuss building a bridge. It was professional interest in the most terrifying possible profession. Your equipment requisitions are ready for review, Vex 7 announced, consulting his datapad. Though I should mention, most of your requests were unusual. Martinez stepped forward. What do you mean unusual? You've requested primitive projectile weapons instead of energy rifles. Bladed implements that appear to be designed for close combat, chemical explosives instead of plasma charges, and several items that our computers couldn't classify at all. May I see the list? Vex 7 handed over the datapad. Martinez scrolled through it, occasionally showing the screen to other humans who would nod or suggest modifications. This all looks standard, she said finally. Is there a problem? Standard for what? Korth asked. Standard for killing things efficiently in close quarters with minimal technological dependence. She said it so reasonably, so matter-of-factly, that it took several seconds for the full implications to register. These humans weren't just offering to serve as soldiers, they were offering to serve as a weapon that would function regardless of technological failures, supply line disruptions, or equipment malfunctions. The mission briefing will be tomorrow at 0800 ship time, Korth announced. You'll be quartered in Section 7. Commander Vex 7 will show you to your accommodations. As the humans filed out, following Vex 7 with the same measured precision they had shown since arrival, Korth found himself wondering if the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. The Hive Collective was about to discover what it meant to fight an enemy that had spent 10 millennia learning to kill, the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. He just hoped the Alliance would still recognize these humans as allies when the fighting was over. The assault on Hive Colony Beta 7 was supposed to be a routine operation. Intelligence indicated moderate defenses, approximately 2,000 Hive warriors and minimal civilian population. Standard Zentari doctrine called for orbital bombardment, followed by ground forces to secure military assets. The humans had other ideas. Request permission to deploy advance reconnaissance, Sergeant Williams announced during the final briefing aboard the Void Render. Admiral Korth looked up from the tactical display. Reconnaissance is already complete. Our drones have mapped the entire colony. With respect, sir, drones show you where things are. They don't show you how things think. I'm not sure I understand. Martinez stepped forward, pointing to the holographic representation of the colony. Your intelligence shows guard positions, patrol routes, defensive installations. But it doesn't show fear patterns, command hierarchy stress points, or psychological weak spots. The Hive Collective doesn't operate on individual psychology. They're a collective intelligence. Every collective has pressure points, another human said. This was Thompson, a middle-aged man whose file indicated expertise in urban warfare and unconventional tactics. There are always individuals who make decisions, individuals who coordinate responses, individuals who maintain morale. Commander Vex 7 consulted his datapad. The humans are requesting permission to insert a 12-person team 48 hours before the main assault. For what purpose? Williams smiled, and that expression made everyone in the briefing room uncomfortable. Psychological preparation of the battlefield. Korth authorized the insertion against his better judgment. 12 humans in a single drop pod, equipped with their requested primitive weapons and a communications array. Their stated objective was reconnaissance and target preparation. What they actually did was begin hunting. The first Hive patrol to disappear was discovered 18 hours later. The bodies were arranged in a specific pattern that made no tactical sense, but clearly represented some kind of message. The second patrol was found with their weapons removed and stacked nearby, along with what appeared to be trophies taken from their equipment. Admiral, the communications officer announced, we're receiving scattered reports from the colony. Their transmissions are becoming increasingly erratic. Show me. The intercepted Hive communications painted a picture of growing panic. References to shadow killers and ghost predators filled their tactical reports. Patrols were being found dead in impossible locations, often in positions that suggested they had been killed while trying to flee from something. This doesn't match human capabilities, Commander Vex 7 observed. 12 individuals cannot systematically terrorize a colony of 2,000. Unless they're not trying to kill 2,000, Admiral Korth realized. They're trying to make 2,000 afraid. The human communications officer, a young woman named Chen, who shared a surname with the Earth ambassador but claimed no relation, provided regular updates with disturbing calm. Team Alpha has eliminated 17 sentries and 4 patrol leaders. Colony defensive coordination is showing significant degradation. Team Beta has compromised 3 ammunition depots without detonating them. Colony leadership is repositioning forces to defend supply lines instead of perimeter positions. How are they moving undetected? Vex 7 asked. They're not undetected, sir. They're being seen just enough to create the desired psychological effect. Classic predator behavior. Make the prey aware they're being hunted without revealing the hunter's location or capabilities. Over the next 24 hours, the reports became increasingly surreal. Hive warriors found dead in secure bunkers with no obvious means of entry. Patrol leaders discovered with their own weapons used against them. Supply convoys attacked by enemies who disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. But the most disturbing reports came from the Hive leadership itself. Admiral, their military coordinators are requesting immediate evacuation, the communications officer reported. They're describing systematic psychological warfare unlike anything in their military experience. What are they saying exactly? They believe they're being hunted by supernatural entities. Some patrols are refusing to leave their bunkers. Others are abandoning their posts entirely. Their command structure is requesting orbital support against enemy forces they describe as incorporeal death spirits. Admiral Korth stared at the tactical display. According to all conventional measures, nothing significant had happened. 12 humans with primitive weapons had killed fewer than 50 enemies out of a total force of 2,000. The colony's defenses remained largely intact. Their weapon systems were still operational, and their numerical advantage was overwhelming, but their military effectiveness had collapsed completely. Communications from team leader Williams, Chen announced. Put him through. Williams' voice came through clearly. though there was background noise that sounded like wind, which was impossible since the colony was in an enclosed habitat. Admiral, the battlefield is prepared for main assault. Recommend immediate deployment. Status of enemy forces? Combat effectiveness reduced to approximately 15% of original capacity. Morale has collapsed. Command structure is intact but non-functional due to psychological stress. Defensive positions remain manned, but coordination between units has broken down completely. Casualties? Ours, 0, theirs, 43 confirmed kills, but that's not the important number. What is the important number? 2,000 enemies who are now afraid to fight. Commander Vex 7 leaned forward. How is that possible? We showed them what it feels like to be prey. The main assault, when it came, was unlike anything in Admiral Korth's military experience. The Zentari forces encountered minimal resistance not because the enemy was defeated, but because they were paralyzed. Hive warriors surrendered immediately upon seeing Zentari forces, apparently convinced that any resistance would result in attracting the attention of the shadow predators who had been hunting them. The colony fell in 4 hours with fewer than a dozen casualties among the assault forces. As the humans regrouped in the colony's central plaza, Admiral Korth finally understood what Ambassador Chen had meant about her species' specialty. They hadn't just defeated the enemy forces. They had demonstrated that humans could break the will to fight itself. Watching Sergeant Williams calmly cleaning a blade that didn't appear in any equipment manifest, Admiral Korth realized the Galactic Alliance had accepted something far more dangerous than an army of psychopaths. They had accepted an army of apex predators who had learned to hunt the most dangerous game in the universe. Intelligent beings who thought they were hunters themselves. Word of the Hive Colony Beta 7 incident spread through the Galactic Alliance faster than Admiral Korth had expected. Within 3 standard weeks, his flagship was receiving communication requests from military commanders across 12 different star systems. Everyone wanted to know about the humans. The aquatic domains were the first to make a formal request. Admiral Korth, Representative Theis's voice bubbled through the communication array. We have a situation in the coral reaches that might benefit from human expertise. What kind of situation? Pirates. The Crimson Tide Syndicate has established bases in our outer territories. They've proven resistant to conventional military operations. Admiral Korth understood the euphemism. The aquatic domains had one of the most advanced navies in the galaxy, but their military doctrine was based on honorable combat between organized forces. Pirates didn't follow those rules. What makes you think humans would be effective against pirates? Pirates think like predators, this explained. Perhaps it requires predators to hunt them. 3 days later, Admiral Korth found himself watching 25 humans prepare for deployment to an aquatic environment. Their equipment requests had been even more unusual than normal, including underwater breathing apparatus that seemed designed for long-term infiltration rather than standard combat operations. The team leader for this mission was a woman named Rodriguez, whose personnel file was largely classified but included references to maritime operations and unconventional naval tactics. She carried scars across her hands that looked like rope burns, and her eyes held the same predatory focus that Korth was beginning to recognize as a human trait. The Crimson Tide operates from a mobile base, Rodriguez explained during the briefing. They move their command ship through asteroid fields where traditional naval forces can't pursue effectively. Their strategy relies on mobility and hiding among civilian shipping. How do you plan to locate a mobile target in an asteroid field? We don't plan to locate them, sir. We plan to make them come to us. The human strategy was unlike anything in standard military doctrine. Instead of hunting the pirates, they positioned themselves as bait. Working with a small merchant vessel provided by the aquatic domains, the humans disguised themselves as a valuable cargo shipment traveling through pirate-controlled space. The ship's manifest indicated high-value technological components bound for a research station in the outer territories. Communications intercept, the Zentari sensor operator announced. Crimson Tide forces are vectoring toward the merchant vessel. How many ships? 3 raiders and what appears to be their command vessel. Estimated crew of approximately 200. Admiral Korth watched the tactical display with growing concern. 4 pirate ships against a single merchant vessel carrying 25 humans. The numbers seemed impossible, even considering what he had learned about human capabilities. Admiral, Rodriguez's voice came through the communication array. "We're being hailed by the lead raider. Respond normally. Act like legitimate merchants." What followed was a standard pirate boarding operation, exactly as described in military textbooks. The raiders disabled the merchant ship's engines, docked their vessels, and sent boarding parties to secure the cargo and crew. That was when things stopped following any textbook ever written. First boarding party has secured the cargo. Bay, the communications operator reported, monitoring pirate transmissions. They're reporting unusual cargo containers. What kind of unusual? They appear to be confused about the contents. The manifest lists technological components, but they're finding... The operator paused, checking his translation software. Personal effects and recreational equipment. Admiral Korth frowned. What kind of recreational equipment? Rope, various bladed implements, and what they describe as hunting trophies. The pirate communications became increasingly confused as more boarding parties explored the merchant vessel. They found what appeared to be living quarters designed for military personnel, equipment that didn't match the cargo manifest, and signs that the ship's crew was not who they claimed to be. "Admiral," Rodriguez's voice came through the communication array again. "The hunting party has taken the bait. Beginning fishing operation." What happened next was systematically captured by the pirates' own security cameras, which broadcast the events back to their command ship in real time. The humans moved through the pirate vessels like a virus through a computer system, appearing in critical locations with impossible timing and disappearing before reinforcements could respond. But unlike the Hive colony operation, this wasn't about psychological warfare. This was about precision elimination of command structures. "Communications from the pirate command ship," the operator announced. "They're requesting immediate evacuation. What's their status?" "They're reporting that their boarding parties have been neutralized and their crew is being systematically eliminated by unknown hostiles." "How many humans are involved in the boarding action?" "According to our monitoring, all 25 are still on the merchant vessel." Admiral Korth stared at the tactical display. The 4 pirate ships remained connected to the merchant vessel by docking tubes, but somehow the humans were moving between all 5 ships simultaneously, eliminating resistance with surgical precision. "Admiral," Rodriguez reported, "we have control of all enemy vessels. Command crews are neutralized, primary systems are secured, and cargo holds have been searched for civilian prisoners. Casualties? Enemy casualties 163. Prisoners 37, mostly technical personnel and recent captives. Our casualties 0. How is that possible?" "Pirates think like predators, sir, but they're not used to being prey. Once we were inside their comfort zone, they couldn't adapt to the tactical environment." The aftermath of the pirate elimination was even more significant than the Hive colony incident. The Crimson Tide Syndicate had been operating in the region for over 5 years, avoiding capture by 3 different military forces and causing significant economic damage to civilian shipping. Humans had eliminated them in 6 hours, but the real impact became clear when Admiral Korth reviewed the prisoners' interrogation reports. The surviving pirates weren't just defeated, they were traumatized. Their descriptions of the human attack were filled with references to invisible demons and death spirits who appeared without warning and killed with supernatural efficiency. They're describing the humans as supernatural entities, Commander Vex 7 observed while reviewing the reports. The Hive warriors said the same thing. "Admiral, I'm beginning to suspect that's intentional." Korth looked at his aide. "What do you mean?" "Humans appear to understand that reputation is a weapon. Every enemy they defeat spreads stories about their capabilities. Those stories become exaggerated, but the exaggeration works in their favor. You think they're deliberately creating mythology about themselves? I think they're using psychology as a force multiplier. Every enemy that surrenders because they've heard stories about human capabilities is an enemy they don't have to fight." Admiral Korth was contemplating this when the next communication request arrived. This one came from the Galactic Council itself. "Admiral Korth," Ambassador Zex-4's image appeared on the main display. "We need to discuss the human situation. Several member species are expressing concerns about the deployment of these specialists." "What kind of concerns?" "The kind that arise when military contractors exceed all performance expectations, while simultaneously terrifying everyone who encounters them. Looking at the humans preparing for their next deployment, Admiral Korth realized the galaxy was beginning to understand what Earth had sent them. Not soldiers, not warriors, not even killers in the conventional sense. Earth had sent apex predators who had learned to hunt the one type of prey that every other species considered untouchable. Intelligent beings who thought they were apex predators themselves. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called after the Vorthak Rebellion collapsed in 18 hours. The humans had been deployed to assist in a conflict that military analysts predicted would last months, possibly years. Instead, the rebellion ended so quickly that news outlets across the galaxy struggled to explain what had happened. Ambassador, Chen sat calmly in the witness chair as representatives from dozens of species demanded explanations. The chamber buzzed with translation devices working overtime to process accusations in 17 different languages simultaneously. Ambassador Chen, HFY began, his voice carrying the formal tone reserved for official inquiries. The Vorthak Rebellion involved approximately 50,000 insurgents, spread across 7 star systems. Previous military operations against organized Vorthak forces have required massive deployments and sustained campaigns. How did 75 humans end an interstellar rebellion in less than one standard day? Chen activated a small holographic projector. The display showed tactical data from the operation, color-coded to indicate different phases of the conflict. The Vorthak Rebellion wasn't a military problem, she explained. It was a leadership problem. Remove the leaders and the rebellion ends. But the Vorthak leadership was distributed across multiple hidden bases. They specifically chose a decentralized command structure to prevent exactly that kind of targeted elimination. Yes, they did. It was a sound strategy against conventional military operations. Representative Thys leaned forward in her water-filled sphere. Are you saying that humans specialize in unconventional operations? I'm saying that humans specialize in hunting individuals who don't want to be found. The holographic display shifted to show the operational timeline. 75 humans deployed to 7 different star systems simultaneously, locating and eliminating rebellion leadership within hours of arrival. This level of intelligence gathering would require extensive surveillance networks. Admiral Korth observed from his position in the military advisory section. How did humans acquire detailed information about hidden rebel bases in such a short time? They didn't acquire intelligence, Admiral. They created it. The chamber fell silent as delegates struggled to understand the distinction. Could you elaborate? HFY requested. Chen smiled that same unsettling smile that had introduced the galaxy to human military philosophy. Humans have learned that the best way to find someone who's hiding is to make them reveal themselves. The rebellion leaders weren't captured through surveillance. They were forced to expose their positions by tactical pressure applied to their support networks. The holographic display showed detailed breakdowns of each operation. Human teams didn't assault rebel bases. They systematically eliminated the infrastructure that kept those bases operational: supply convoys, communication networks, recruitment centers, financial operations, everything that allowed the rebellion to function. Within 6 hours of deployment, rebel leadership was forced to choose between abandoning their hidden positions or watching their entire organization collapse. Chen continued. They chose to reveal themselves in order to coordinate emergency responses. And then they were eliminated, Admiral Korth concluded. And then they surrendered, Chen corrected. 43 of the 47 primary rebellion leaders are still alive. They're currently in Alliance custody providing information about other insurgent networks. That detail sent another wave of concerned murmurs through the chamber. The Vorthak were known for their honor-based culture and absolute loyalty to their chosen causes. The idea that Vorthak leaders would surrender and cooperate with their captors was unprecedented. How did you convince Vorthak rebels to surrender? Representative Thys asked. Their cultural programming makes them incapable of betraying their cause. Cultural programming can be reprogrammed under sufficient stress, Chen replied matter-of-factly. Humans have extensive experience with psychological pressure techniques. You're talking about torture, accused Counselor Vrex of the crystalline domains, his voice carrying harmonics that indicated moral outrage. We're talking about demonstrating consequences. Each rebellion leader was shown exactly what continued resistance would cost their followers, their families, and their communities. When presented with comprehensive evidence of what humans are capable of, 43 of them chose cooperation over escalation. What evidence? Zex-4 demanded. The holographic display shifted again, showing footage that made several delegates look away. Rebel bases that had been infiltrated and neutralized with surgical precision. Command bunkers that had been breached by enemies who left no traces of their entry methods. Supply convoys that had simply vanished without distress signals or evidence of conventional attacks. Humans demonstrated that Vorthak's security measures are ineffective against human infiltration techniques. They proved that Vorthak defensive positions can be compromised at will. They showed that human forces can eliminate any target anywhere, anytime without being detected or stopped. And the rebellion leaders believed this? The rebellion leaders witnessed it happening to their own forces in real time. Belief wasn't required. Admiral Korth stood slowly, his massive frame commanding attention. Ambassador Chen, what you're describing sounds like terrorism. What I'm describing is the difference between breaking an enemy's capability to fight and breaking their will to fight. Humans have learned that the second approach is often more efficient. More efficient and more terrifying, Counselor Vrex observed. Yes, Chen agreed simply. Terror is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used constructively or destructively. In this case, it was used to prevent a prolonged conflict that would have resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species demanded immediate restrictions on human military operations. Others argued that results spoke for themselves. The aquatic domains wanted to expand human deployments to other piracy problems. The crystalline domains threatened to withdraw from the alliance if humans continued to be used in military operations. Through the chaos, Chen remained perfectly calm, waiting for the noise to subside. When Zex-4 finally restored order, she continued as if the interruption hadn't occurred. The Galactic Council asked Earth to contribute to your military efforts. We have done exactly what you requested. If the results make you uncomfortable, perhaps you should examine what that discomfort tells you about your own military methods. What do you mean? Admiral Korth asked. Your species fight wars the way civilized beings should. With honor, with rules, with respect for your enemy's dignity. Humans fight wars the way wars are actually won, by making the enemy prefer surrender to continued fighting. You're saying we've been fighting incorrectly? I'm saying you've been fighting like people who have other options. Humans fight like people who don't. Representative Thys bubbled thoughtfully in her sphere. Are you implying that humans are naturally more violent than other species? I'm stating that humans are naturally better at violence than other species. There's a difference. Violence comes naturally to most predators. Efficient violence, strategic violence, psychological violence, those require practice. And humans have had that practice. Humans have had 10,000 years of continuous practice against the most challenging opponents possible. Other humans who were practicing just as hard. The holographic display showed historical footage again, but this time the focus was different. Instead of showing human brutality, it showed human adaptation. Military techniques evolving rapidly in response to countermeasures. Weapons development accelerating under pressure. Tactical innovation spreading through human armies with unprecedented speed. Every other species in this chamber developed military technology to defend against external threats, Chen explained. Humans developed military technology to overcome opponents who were using identical technology, identical tactics, and identical strategic thinking. You're saying humans are better soldiers because you've been fighting yourselves? Zex-4 summarized, I'm saying humans are better at ending wars because we've learned that the fastest way to end a war is to make it clear that continuing the war will cost more than surrendering. And if the enemy refuses to surrender, Chen's smile became something that made the environmental systems in the chamber work harder to maintain comfortable temperatures. Then we demonstrate why surrender was the reasonable choice. The voting that followed was unlike anything in the Council's history. Instead of a simple yes or no on human participation, the Alliance found itself debating fundamental questions about the nature of warfare itself. Some species wanted humans restricted to defensive operations only. Others wanted them deployed immediately to resolve conflicts that had been draining resources for years. A few wanted to study human military methods to improve their own forces. Several threatened to leave the Alliance entirely, if humans were given unrestricted military authority. But the most unsettling proposal came from the humans themselves. Earth requests permission to establish a training facility, Chen announced during the final session. We would like to offer instruction in human military methods to Alliance forces. 6 months after the Galactic Council vote, Admiral Korth stood in the observation deck of his flagship, watching something that should have been impossible. Below him, on the training facility that humans had constructed in the neutral zone, soldiers from 12 different species were learning to fight like humans. The vote had been closer than anyone expected. 51 species in favor, 49 opposed. The deciding factor had been the hegemony war in the outer spiral, where conventional Alliance forces had been fighting the same entrenched positions for 3 years with minimal progress. The Council decided that whatever moral concerns they had about human methods, they needed wars to end faster than they were starting. Status report on the training program, Commander Vex 7 requested from the facility's director, a human named Colonel Harrison, whose personnel file was so heavily classified that even Admiral Korth couldn't access most of it. Currently training 216 soldiers from Alliance member species, Harrison replied. Graduation rate is approximately 40%. What happens to the 60% who don't graduate? They return to conventional military service with a better understanding of why conventional methods often fail against unconventional opponents. Admiral Korth activated the observation cameras to watch the training in progress. What he saw challenged everything he thought he understood about military education. In one section, Centauri soldiers were learning to move through urban environments with a fluidity that seemed to defy their massive bulk. Their instructor, a small human woman, was teaching them to use their size and strength in ways that Centauri military doctrine had never considered. The key is to make your opponent think your size is a disadvantage, she was explaining. Let them choose tactics designed to exploit your bulk, then demonstrate that your bulk is actually a weapon they can't counter. In another section, delicate Sylvan soldiers were learning to use their natural flight capabilities for reconnaissance and psychological warfare. Their instructor was showing them how to exploit their seemingly harmless appearance to get close to enemies who would never see them as threats. Your species looks like decorative insects to most other species, the human instructor explained. Use that. Get inside their defenses, gather intelligence, identify weaknesses, then signal for the real attack. But the most disturbing training was taking place in the psychological warfare section. War is about breaking your enemy's will to fight. Colonel Harrison was explaining to a mixed group of Alliance soldiers. Physical destruction is just one method. Often, it's not even the most efficient method. The lesson involved case studies from human conflicts, but also from the recent operations against the Hive Collective, the Crimson Tide Pirates, and the Vorthak Rebellion. The humans were teaching Alliance soldiers not just how to fight, but how to make enemies surrender without fighting. Observe the Vorthak case study, Harrison continued. The rebellion had 50,000 fighters. If we had used conventional tactics, we would have needed to defeat all 50,000 to end the conflict. Instead, we identified 47 individuals whose capture would make the other 49,953 surrender voluntarily. A Centauri student raised his hand. How do you identify those key individuals? You study the enemy's social structures, psychological dependencies, and decision-making hierarchies. Then you determine which individuals the enemy cannot function without. And then you kill them. And then you capture them, demonstrate that you could have killed them, and offer them a choice between cooperation and watching their entire organization be systematically dismantled. Admiral Korth turned away from the observation screen. Colonel Harrison, are you teaching Alliance soldiers to become terrorists? Harrison considered the question seriously. I'm teaching Alliance soldiers to end wars quickly. If that looks like terrorism to you, perhaps you should examine why conventional warfare looks acceptable. Conventional warfare follows established rules of engagement. It respects the dignity of combatants and non-combatants. Conventional warfare also lasts for years, costs millions of lives, and often fails to resolve the underlying conflicts that caused the war in the first place. That may be true, but at least conventional warfare preserves moral standards. Admiral, may I ask you a question? Go ahead. How many people died in the 3-year hegemony war before humans were deployed? Admiral Korth checked his datapad. Approximately 400,000 military casualties and 2 million civilian deaths. And how many people died when humans ended the war? 17,000 military casualties and 0 civilian deaths. Which outcome better preserves moral standards? The one that respects military traditions or the one that saves lives? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Admiral Korth found himself unable to answer immediately, which was itself an answer. The problem, Harrison continued, is that most species view warfare as an extension of politics. Humans view warfare as a failure of politics that needs to be ended as quickly as possible. You're saying we approach war incorrectly? I'm saying you approach war like people who expect to survive it. Humans approach war like people who want to make sure they never have to fight the same war again. Commander Vex 7 activated another observation screen. What's happening in that section? The screen showed human instructors working with Alliance soldiers on what appeared to be acting exercises. Students were practicing facial expressions, vocal tones, and body language under different scenarios. Psychological manipulation training, Harrison explained. Students learn to project confidence, fear, authority, or helplessness as tactical requirements demand. You're teaching them to lie? I'm teaching them to communicate effectively with enemies who might respond to different psychological cues. Sometimes projecting strength prevents fights. Sometimes projecting weakness creates opportunities for counterattacks. Admiral Korth watched a Zentari soldier practice looking terrified, an expression that seemed impossible for his species' naturally intimidating features. But the human instructor was somehow teaching him to use body language and vocal techniques that conveyed vulnerability despite his massive size. This is psychological warfare at the individual level, Korth observed. This is understanding that every interaction during a conflict is an opportunity to influence the enemy's decision-making process. Harrison corrected. Most species fight until they're physically incapable of continuing. Humans fight until they convince the enemy that continuing is counterproductive. And if the enemy refuses to be convinced, Harrison's expression became something that reminded Admiral Korth why humans were simultaneously the most valuable and most dangerous allies the Alliance had ever acquired. Then we moved to more persuasive methods. The training facility had been operational for 6 months, and its graduates were already being deployed across Alliance territories. Early reports suggested that conflicts involving human-trained soldiers were ending, faster and with fewer casualties than conventional operations, but they were also generating complaints from enemy forces about unfair tactics and psychological terrorism. Several enemy commanders had formally protested to neutral parties about Alliance forces that fought without honor and used supernatural intimidation techniques. Admiral Korth realized the galaxy was changing in ways that went far beyond military tactics. Humans weren't just teaching other species how to fight more effectively. They were teaching them to think about conflict in fundamentally different ways. The question was whether the Alliance would recognize its soldiers when they came back from learning to fight like humans. 2 years after the first human deployment, the Galactic Alliance faced a crisis that nobody had anticipated. There were no more wars. Admiral Korth stood in the same council chamber where Ambassador Chen had first offered humanities services. But the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of discussing military operations, the assembled delegates were struggling to understand a galaxy where conflicts ended before they began. Status report from all sectors, Zex 4 requested, his voice carrying a bewilderment that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. The Spiral Arm territories report 0 active conflicts, the military coordinator announced. 3 potential rebellions were resolved through negotiation after the rebels learned that human-trained forces would be deployed against them. The outer colonies? 2 piracy syndicates surrendered to local authorities rather than face human intervention. Crime rates in previously problematic sectors have dropped by 78%. Border disputes? The Hegemony War ended 14 months ago. The territorial conflicts in the Meridian sector were resolved when both sides agreed to mediation, rather than risk human involvement. No current border disputes require military intervention. Ambassador Chen sat quietly in the witness chair, listening to reports that described the most peaceful period in galactic history. But instead of celebration, the chamber was filled with a tension that bordered on panic. Ambassador Chen, Representative Thais began, her water sphere bubbling with agitation. When we accepted human military assistance, we expected soldiers. What we received was something that has fundamentally altered the nature of conflict itself. How so? Species that have been enemies for centuries are now negotiating treaties rather than fighting wars. Criminal organizations are disbanding rather than risk confrontation with human-trained forces. Entire civilizations are restructuring their military doctrines based on the assumption that conventional warfare is obsolete. Chen nodded. That sounds like a positive development. It would be, Zex4 interjected, if we understood what humans actually are. The chamber fell silent as delegates considered a question that had been growing in importance for months. Every conflict involving humans had ended the same way. Quickly, decisively, and with the enemy apparently convinced that resistance was futile. But the methods humans used defied conventional understanding. Admiral Korth, Zex4 continued, you've worked with humans more closely than anyone. In your professional opinion, what exactly did Earth send us? Admiral Korth stood slowly, his massive frame casting familiar shadows across the chamber. 2 years of working with humans had changed him in ways that were obvious to anyone who had known him before. His tactical thinking was sharper, his strategic planning more ruthless, and his understanding of warfare had evolved beyond traditional military doctrine. Earth sent us exactly what Ambassador Chen said they would send, he began. Individuals who are exceptionally good at killing things. But what we didn't understand was that humans have refined killing into a science that goes far beyond physical elimination. Explain. Humans don't just kill bodies. They kill morale. They kill willpower. They kill the psychological foundations that make organized resistance possible, and they do it so efficiently that most enemies surrender before they realize they're being attacked. You're saying humans are psychological warriors? I'm saying humans are predators who have learned to hunt, the one prey that every other species considers unhuntable. The will to fight. Itself, Commander Vex 7 activated a holographic display showing casualty statistics from the past 2 years. The numbers were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Military casualties have decreased by 94% across all Alliance territories, he reported. Civilian casualties from armed conflicts have decreased by 98%. Economic damage from warfare has decreased by 96%. Those statistics would suggest that humans are the most effective peacekeeping force in galactic history. Counselor Vrex observed. They would be, Admiral Korth agreed, if we could determine whether humans are keeping the peace or simply making war too terrifying to contemplate. Is there a difference? Chen asked quietly. The question echoed through the chamber with uncomfortable implications. The delegates had spent 2 years celebrating the end of conflicts without examining the methods that ended them. Now they were forced to confront the possibility that peace achieved through fear might not be peace at all. Ambassador Chen, Representative Theiss spoke carefully. There are reports from across the galaxy about human training methods that some species find concerning. What kind of reports? Soldiers returning from human training facilities with psychological profiles that don't match their original species characteristics. Military commanders making tactical decisions that prioritize psychological impact over strategic objectives. Entire military cultures being restructured around human concepts of warfare. You're describing successful adaptation to more effective military methods. We're describing the systematic replacement of our military traditions with human military traditions, Chen smiled. And for the first time in 2 years, that expression didn't make the environmental systems work harder. It looked genuinely amused. Members of the Galactic Council, she began. 2 years ago, you asked Earth to contribute military specialists to help resolve conflicts. We provided specialists who resolved those conflicts so effectively that new conflicts became rare. Now you're concerned because our methods work too well? We're concerned because we don't understand what your methods actually are, Zex4 replied. Humans achieve results that should be impossible using techniques that appear to violate fundamental principles of military science. Which principles? The principle that warfare is about applying superior force to overcome enemy resistance. That principle assumes the enemy will continue to resist regardless of circumstances. Humans understand that resistance is a choice and choices can be influenced. By making resistance appear futile, by making resistance actually futile, then demonstrating that fact in ways the enemy cannot ignore. Admiral Korth leaned forward. Ambassador, are humans teaching other species to fight like humans, or are they teaching other species to become humans? The question struck at the heart of what had been troubling the Alliance leadership. Soldiers trained by humans didn't just fight differently. They thought differently, planned differently, related to conflict in ways that seem to fundamentally alter their species' approach to warfare. Admiral, what do you think the difference is? I think humans approach warfare as apex predators who view other intelligent species as prey. I think the training you provide teaches other species to adopt that same perspective. And you find that concerning? I find it effective. Which is exactly what concerns me. Chen stood slowly, her movements carrying the same predatory precision that had characterized human behavior since their first appearance in Alliance space. Members of the Galactic Council, you have a choice to make. You can continue to benefit from human military expertise, accepting that human methods transform the species that use them, or you can return to conventional warfare, accepting that conventional warfare fails to resolve the conflicts it's supposed to end. What if we choose a third option? Zex4 asked. What if we ask humans to leave? Chen's smile returned, and this time the environmental systems definitely worked harder. That would be your choice to make. But I should mention that several hundred Alliance soldiers have completed human training programs. Human military techniques are already integrated into Alliance tactical doctrine. Human approaches to conflict resolution are already being used by 12 different species. You're saying it's too late to go back to the way things were? I'm saying that once you've learned to hunt the way apex predators hunt, it's very difficult to go back to being prey. The voting that followed was the most important in the Alliance's history, though few delegates realized it at the time. They were voting on whether to accept that humans had fundamentally changed what it meant to be a military power in the galaxy. The final tally was 67 in favor of continued human involvement, 33 opposed. But as Admiral Korth watched the results being announced, he realized the vote didn't matter. Humans hadn't just offered to help the Alliance win wars. They had taught the Alliance to think like a species that didn't lose wars. The galaxy would never be the same.